496 BC. Rome was a young, sick, and surrounded by enemies youngster. But at Lake Regillus, one struggle would decide whether baby Republic would survive or be smothered under the heel of kingship's return. This was no ordinary brawl. It was Romans against Latins, brother against brother, and, notwithstanding myth, gods themselves charged into combat. This is the Battle of Lake Regillus. In 509 BC, the Roman monarchy collapsed as Rome's last king, Lucius Tarquinius Superbus, was driven out. The Republic replaced it, with elected consuls and the Senate in command. However, the memory of kings still hung over Rome. Tarquinius did not finish yet. He enlisted allies all over Latium, even the powerful Latin League. His purpose was simple: to reclaim Rome and restore monarchy. The Latins, being discontent under Roman rule, saw opportunity. Their commander, Octavius Mamilius of Tusculum, was aptly named and ambitious as well. He married into Tarquinius's family, gaining legitimacy on their union. Together, they plotted against Rome's annihilation. For the Romans, their existence hung in the balance. Only 17 years had passed since the Republic was founded, and already its existence was weighed in the balance. The Senate mobilized for war, placing two of Rome's greatest consuls in command, Aulus Postumius Albus and Titus Abutius Elva. Their task was nothing less than defending the Republic itself. By 496 BC, the tensions had come to a head in open war. Rome and the Latin League would fight near the volcanic depression called Lake Regillus, northeast of Rome, on ground soon to be stained with blood. The legions advanced, drums pounded, and the two forces prepared for the decisive confrontation to decide the course of Italy. The uneasy alliance between Rome and her Latin neighbors at last came to an end in 497 BC. Years of hostility had been building up. The Latin League, led by Octavius Mamilius, was angry at Rome's growing strength and wanted freedom from Roman dominance. Encouraged by Tarquinius Superbus to do so, the Latins flouted Rome openly. The Romans responded with urgency. Consuls Abutius Titus and Aulus Postumius levied troops from all over Latium. Ploughmen left the fields, blacksmiths toiled day and night equipping the army. Even Rome's cavalry, composed of the wealthiest patricians, prepared for war. The city trembled with passion. Both forces had taken to the field by early 496 BC. Postumius chose the area around Lake Regillus as the battlefield. The lake sat within a volcanic crater, the shore sparsely populated with rolling hills and flat plains, perfect for use by cavalry and infantry alike. They arrived first, and the Latins occupied prime positions, mustering their coalition of troops from Tusculum, Aricia, and other Latin cities. Tarquinius himself, in his advanced age, commanded them to march. A white-haired exile, his voice was bitter with the denial of kingship. His presence was the goad to the Latin soldiers. Now would be their time to see the restoration of the monarchy at Rome. The Romans followed suit shortly. Consul Postumius rallied his army, declaring that the Republic itself was in danger. The two armies faced each other on the plain of Lake Regillus, the shields of their armor shining in the sun. The stage was set for one of Rome's greatest mythic battles. By mid-496 BC, both sides had advanced near Lake Regillus. The Romans, led by consuls Aulus Postumius Albus and Titus Abutius Elva, numbered a few legions of infantry supplemented with cavalry made up of Rome's patrician class. They had no equals in discipline, well trained with close order tactics of shield and sword. Opposed to them was the Latin League, under the leadership of Octavius Mamilius of Tusculum, and supported by Aricia, Cora, and the other Latin cities. They were less trained, but possessed greater numbers, and the fear of Tarquinius Superbus, the son of Ancus, who had men accompanying him on his pride of blood royalty. His sons, Titus and Aruns, were also said to be present, hoping to reclaim their father's throne. The field itself was silent and strained. The volcanic slopes of Lake Regillus rang out with the whinnying of horses and clashing of armor. Standards were waved, Latin eagles against the Roman wolf, shining rows of shields clashing, spears bent, and cavalry on wings awaiting charge. Legend has it that as the sun rose high in the heavens, both sides made their case to the gods. The Romans invoked Castor and Pollux, twin gods, who protected Rome. The Latins, led by Mamilius, invoked Jupiter and Mars for vengeance. The air was electric. At last, the horns sounded, and the ground shook with the din of two peoples barreling into each other. The Battle of Lake Regillus had begun. The first battle at Lake Regillus exploded in thunder. Roman troops advanced in disciplined ranks, shields locked, swords at the ready. Their consuls, Aulus Postumius Albus and Titus Abutius Elva, goaded along the ranks, shouting encouragement, ordering men to keep formation. The Latin League, led by Octavius Mamilius of Tusculum, thundered back in kind. Their solid phalanx moved up from the high ground, javelins on their necks coming down on Roman lines. The atmosphere echoed with the ring of bronze against wood, wails of the wounded, and the constant beat of war drums. In the middle, the Romans set themselves. Their tight, well-trained units held formation despite being outnumbered. Swords thrust through crevices in Latin shields, and pila were hurled in deadly volleys. Still, the Latins came on. Mamilius himself fought in the front lines, his savage appearance goading his troops forward. The overthrown king, Tarquinius Superbus, too aged to fight, behind the Latin lines, his sons leading the way. His purple robe was a reminder of monarchy's shadow to the Romans, a flag of vengeance to the Latins. The plain was a sea of chaos, dust, sweat, and blood. Lines bent, but did not break. The only thing that each side understood was that this battle was not for territory, it was for the survival of Rome. The fight turned hand to hand, brutal and intimate, as the meeting of infantry at Lake Regillus peaked. As the infantry grappled in a deadly clinch, the cavalry wings thundered into combat. On the Roman side, the equites, made up of the Republic's wealthiest patrician families, rode under shining crests, their horses armored and restless. At the command of Consul Aulus Postumius Albus himself, they stood ready to ride around the flanks. Out of every quadrant of the field, the Latin horse under Octavius Mamilius of Tusculum and sons of Tarquinius Superbus answered in similar fury. The Latins were rightfully proud of their horsemen, and the open country beyond Lake Regillus was perfect ground for battle on horseback. Dust boiled in massive clouds as each wing charged forward, lowered lances, pounding hooves like thunder. The first contact was ferocious. Horsemen stabbed other horsemen at full tilt, shields splintering, horses screaming as they clashed. Others were bucked off their mounts and trampled beneath the melee. But the Romans kept their formation, regrouping immediately after each collision. Postumius commanded his horsemen to charge at the flanks, forcing the Latins back from behind the Roman infantry. The Latins, however, were no less determined. Octavius Mamilius himself commanded his horsemen, killing foes with sword and spear, his command invoking fury upon his fellow soldiers. Standing with him were the Tarquin princes, battling foolishly, desperate to make themselves worthy of the throne they sought to recover. Again and again, the cavalry charged in blurring tumult, charge, retreat, and charge again. Neither had visible advantage. But these battles set the beat of the battle, draining strength and will, while infantry still struggled with shields in the middle. Lake Regillus echoed the crash of hooves and men's screams, its outcome uncertain. It was here, in the cavalry, that the Republic's fortunes gradually turned. Battle at Lake Regillus raged on into the afternoon. Dust was so thick that soldiers were fighting by touch instead of vision, but the ring of sword on shield, never faltered. Amidst the mayhem, fate befell both sides. For the Romans, Consul Titus Aebutius Elva charged directly into the heart of Latin horse. He aimed at Octavius Mamilius of Tusculum, the architect of Latin League resistance. The two leaders spotted each other in the battle and spurred their horses on. Spears in defensed position, they clashed with tremendous force. Both were severely injured, Aebutius hit in the flank, and Mamilius transfixed through the breast. The shock ran through both armies. Aebutius, severely wounded, was carried from the field by Roman cavalrymen. His removal left Aulus Postumius Albus to command the army of the Republic by himself. Among the Latins, Mamilius refused to turn his back. Seriously wounded, he sat his horse, encouraging his men, his valor enraging the allies of Tusculum. But loss of blood checked him. Each charge was less strong than the last, each spate briefer. Still, the mere fact that their injured general kept fighting spurred on the Latins. They hurled themselves at the Romans with renewed ferocity, seeking to break the infantry ranks. Meanwhile, Titus and Aruns, sons of Tarquinius Superbus, had tried to gain the initiative. They charged into the Roman flank, ready to make the turning point. But the Romans, although stumbling, would not yield. The duel of the commanders had changed the rhythm of battle. Both sides were now fighting more desperation, with the fate of their leaders hanging in the balance. The field at Lake Regillus was stained with more than just blood. It was drenched with the fate of nations. As the sun set in the direction of the West Hills, Lake Regillus was a witness to a field of exhaustion and fury. With both Titus Aebutius Elva and Octavius Mamilius of Tusculum slain, leadership fell squarely on the shoulders of Aulus Postumius Albus, Dictator of Rome. He knew that the time for decision had arrived. Postumius rode down along the broken lines, throat raw but intact. He pledged every man land and spoils if they kept their places. And then, in a desperate bid, he ordered his horsemen to dismount and fight dismounted, filling in the gaps where the infantry wavered. The horsemen did that, standing as a wall of living steel. The Latins, bolstered by Mamilius's lingering presence, pushed forward once more. But disaster befell Mamilius, already weakened by his chest wound, who was finally brought down by a Roman spear. His death caused shockwaves among the Latin League troops. Wails of despair ran like wildfire as the men of Tusculum started to waver. Then Postumius seized the opportunity. He ordered a general assault. Roman shields locked, pila flew in arcs of death, and the highly disciplined legions advanced. The demoralized and broken Latins stumbled, then fled. Tarquinius Superbus himself, an octogenarian or more, tried to rouse them but was trampled aside in the rout. Once more the old king took gall and defeat. His dream of restoration had ended in blood and dust. By night, Lake Regillus was deserted except for the dying's cries. Rome had triumphed, not merely a battle, but right. The victory of 496 BC shattered the resistance of the Latin League and ensured that the Roman Republic, and not the exiled monarchy, would shape Italy's destiny.